Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is now time to visit with our friends from Environmental Services Division. We'd like to welcome Shirlene Sitton and Michaela Bagans. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. And we have a very special guest, City Attorney Erin McSherry. Hello,
Hello.
Erin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being with us. Now, Happy New Year to everybody.
I know.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Yes,
Happy New Year.
2022.
2022 is here. The holidays came, the holidays went, but we still have recycling our Christmas trees, don't we?
Yeah, I was going to say we're going to do our typical little update and announcement segment and try to keep it quick so we can get to the main event here, which is Erin. But last show we did mention that if you were very zealous about putting or taking down your tree, you could have recycled it last week. But for most of us, I think now is when we're really thinking about taking things down and cleaning up or not. Shirlene looks like she might be waiting a little bit longer.
The holiday weekend upcoming is usually.
Yeah. Well, regardless of when you decide to take down your decorations, if you have a real Christmas tree, there are two options for recycling it and turning it into mulch throughout the month of January, and it's free. So please don't throw them away. If you can help it, bring them to Franklin Miles Park from now until January 31st. The park hours are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and you drop it off there. Or you can take it to BERT, the Buckman Road Recycling and Transfer Station, through January 23rd, not quite to the end of the month. In both cases, please take everything off of the tree. We don't want your tree stand. We don't want your lights. We don't want the star on top. Take everything off, bring it to one of those two locations, and we will turn it into mulch for free. With BERT, if your tree is in a trailer with other green waste or trash, they will charge appropriate fees. So please just bring the tree. Same thing with the park. We don't want anything else in those locations. And for BERT, if you would like mulch is often available for free. Just call ahead to confirm availability. And if you can't do either of those for any reason, you can place your real or artificial tree in your trash cart. Please don't place it in your recycling cart, and make sure your cart closes. If you need to take a little saw or something and break it down, do that. But if it's sticking out of your cart, we can't pick it up.
Well, Michaela, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I have a question for you. So I have seen some trees out there that are artificial that already have the lights built into them. And so I know that some people can add lights, but I, for the first time, saw some trees that had like already lights, little small lights as part of the branches kind of type thing. We just want to remind our listening audience that if it is an artificial tree that has lights, they don't want the proper way to dispose of that is...
If it's broken, it goes in the trash.
Yes.
Yeah, and we don't know. None of this is for artificial trees. It's just for the real ones that we can turn into mulch
Right.
and compost.
That's right.
Artificial ones, no, thank you.
No, thank you on the artificial, and wanted to make sure because...
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
If you have to get rid of your artificial tree, it's the trash.
It is the trash. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. No mulching anything artificial. Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody wants plastic bits in their garden.
No, we don't. Well, thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure because sometimes, it takes hearing a couple of times to make sure, oh, okay, I got that point. So,
So real trees, nothing on them, BERT or Franklin Miles Park, pretty much through the end of the month. So, and that information is available on our website, santafenm.gov/ESD, if anybody wasn't furiously taking notes during the last few minutes.
Well, you know where else it's available? Speaking of Happy New Year, it's available on your 2022 residential calendar.
Yes, indeed. Those are finally out. I'm very excited about those.
Very excited about the residential calendar. Tell our listening audience, they probably have heard us talk about our favorite little leaf there. Let's kind of, talk about that. Who's the main character?
So we mailed out our calendars this year, and the theme is it's my Santa Fe, it's our Santa Fe. It's about taking action to do what you can to make our world a better place right here in Santa Fe right now. It's not asking you to completely reinvent your life. It's just little things throughout the year that you can do to make Santa Fe a better place. And yes, there is tree recycling information in there. I believe it just says it's for the first 2 weeks, but I've since talked to our parks team and they have extended it through the end of January. So Franklin Miles Park through the end of January. I'd suggest going to the website for all the details on tree recycling. But if you do happen to go to the website, you can also download a PDF copy of the calendar. And if you really, really want a paper copy, you can pick one up at the Constituent Services Office at City Hall or here at the ESD offices, regular business hours. Please wear a mask when you come, et cetera, et cetera. They are designed for people who have a residential trash and recycling account. So the information in there is geared to help you know what to put in your trash and recycling cart and so on and so forth. There is other information there that's relevant to any City of Santa Fe resident, but just so people understand, the core of the calendar is for people who have a residential trash and recycling account. So yeah, we're excited. That's a pretty cool thing that we put out every year. So again, all of this information is available online at santafenm.gov/ESD.
Well, fabulous. And I was wanting to see for our listening family that's watching on YouTube, wanted to kind of share what it looked
Oh,
like.
look.
Look at that. Residential Services Calendar 2022, City of Santa Fe Environmental Services Division. Look at those calendar contents. Pretty cool.
Well, when you see that in your mailbox, keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
not junk
recyclable,
mail,
but
don't recycle it. You can recycle it at the end of the year, but hopefully you'll keep it this year and just really benefit from the content. Download the app, see when the free days are for green waste and tires and household hazardous waste and all that kind of information's in there.
Wow, this is really cool. Special waste handling. Lots of great content in here. Oh my gosh. Absolutely love it.
You can see the theme. It's My Santa Fe. We're really trying to get people to understand that everyone has personal responsibility to help keep the city beautiful, litter-free, all of the things they want. And city staff can't just do it alone. And in many cases, many things there aren't jobs. Right? We don't have people whose job it is just to go out and pick up litter. So that's why we have events and we encourage volunteers. And so the whole idea behind the theme, It's My Santa Fe, is for people to understand that and look for ways that they can take personal action. And that's a great segue into our special guest today.
Yes, it is. We're very excited to have City Attorney Erin McSherry on with us today. In addition to being the top legal expert for the city, Erin has also challenged herself to live a low-waste lifestyle, starting with a New Year's resolution in 2011, I think you said, to generate no more than one tall kitchen-sized bag of trash throughout the entire year.
The whole year.
Wow.
The whole year, one bag of trash. So Erin is going to talk about her experiences and tips and so on and so forth. So Erin, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what started this.
Sure. And I would say I had probably challenged myself to little trash before that, but I had never quantified it in that way. And I had certainly never gone to that level of extreme. And I have not since, but certainly a lot of those practices I think have continued on. So that was literally a decade ago. It was kind of a scavenger hunt of sorts, but yes, I had I think less and less trash. I'd been composting for several years. I'd started to realize how many products are available in bulk that you could just bring your own container and reuse it. So you generate essentially zero trash from that. And so I'd started to kind of investigate some of those options, like buying soap in bulk, buying detergent in bulk, that kind of thing. I did go to some extremes that year that I have not kept on board, such as making my own toothpaste,
Ooh,
which is baking powder, salt, some flavoring, like some essential oil flavoring of like peppermint or something. My dentist friend told me I should start using fluoride again. So, um, so I did. Never had a cavity, so I've been pretty lucky. But so I did try some extreme things, but it was kind of the gamification of no trash as well. Like which stores. So actually, since then I'm sorry, Trader Joe's, but I have barely ever gone to Trader Joe's since that year. I only go there for very specific things that only they have, but a lot of their food is packaged in more packaging than almost anyone else has, honestly.
Yeah.
they have like individually
they've gotten
wrapped
better.
vegetables.
What's that? Yeah.
They have individual. Well, yeah, you're right. I do think they've gotten a little better, but up until recently, you could go in and buy,
A couple of bell peppers on a
In a-
styrofoam tray
Right.
covered with plastic wrap. I know exactly
Right.
what you're talking
Right.
about.
And I also, I think, was pretty impacted in terms of how I buy food by like Michael Pollan's books. So like Omnivore's Dilemma and that kind of thing, which I read like before law school. And I think that really impacted just how I visit grocery stores. So I really do like the perimeter, except at Sprouts, the perimeter is in the middle now. So like Sprouts, the Co-op, those became kind of my mainstays. And then now and then other places where I would try to find, like, if I could find like personal hygiene products with less trash, like a toothbrush, like who sells toothbrushes without a lot of packaging, that kind of stuff. Or with all recycling packaging. I found out about a toothpaste or a toothbrush company that would like take your toothpaste back and it recycles it for you. I don't think I actually did that one. I think I had a toothbrush or, a few in my trash at the end of the year.
So I'm curious on this. What you said you were already kind of thinking about, low waste, reducing consumption, but what was the conversation or the moment? Did a friend say, I bet you can't go a year without producing any trash? Or like what led to this specific challenge?
That's a really good question. I think I had less and less, and probably just had a conversation about how often I even really had to put out the trash ever, which was very rarely. And still, I think I put it out less than once a month, where I am now. But I do have more than one bag of trash per year. So you definitely, it's not an indication of whether I'm home, whether my trash is out, right, or recycling, because I just do not have very much.
Were you living in Santa Fe when you did this? Or
yes, I was. I was actually living in the South Capitol area, and I was renting a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay, so for anybody listening who says, I can't do this in Santa Fe, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and actually at the time, plastic, you could only recycle bottles.
Wow.
And so I did not, so recycling was not part of the one bag of trash, but I did try to not have very much recycling as well. But there were certain things that were recyclable in Albuquerque, and I would actually just keep those separately. And my parents live in Albuquerque, and I would take them to their house. But I would say one of the biggest challenges is really you can't do takeout food. And so like pandemic was really, really hard on me because I did a lot of takeout food. I also, did pick up groceries or delivered groceries for a while there. And that caused a lot of trash because, they were I don't put vegetables in bags generally, they do. And then we're using plastic bags and all that kind of thing. So I would say the pandemic was really painful. But yes, I was in Santa Fe. I've lived in Santa Fe 2 times. One was between 2004 and 2006. And then I've been here also since 2010. So I've been here the last 12 years, basically. And this was in 2011. So I was in an apartment, so I wasn't making repairs to a home, which now I have to do. And that I find is definitely a source of trash.
Yes.
I also didn't have a pet, which I find my cat is a source of trash because he's an indoor cat because I don't, for various reasons. But I do use like pecan, there's a pecan litter that I use, which I need to look into further. I do not I do throw that away. So I would say that's one of my main sources of trash now, is that. But then things too, like if you paint, like how do you paint a room without creating some trash? Like the paint.
Yeah.
I would be interested in recommendations for home things that use less trash because I've found that that's like a big source of what I
interesting.
Well, that's a good question. Maybe that's something we can work on and do some social media posts about, things like that.
Yeah. So when you started this challenge, did you have to do anything like major to prepare, or was it just kind of a let me just catalog what I'm already doing?
There were a few steps. So what I did look at, so I had a bag of, I had a container of trash bags, and I took one out, and that was gonna be my trash bag. And then I gave the rest of them to someone else who would use them and was gonna use them anyway that year. And then I did the same thing with paper products. Like I think I had some, paper towels, and I gave them to someone who typically they were not planning to give out paper towels that year. So that person got the paper towels. I didn't want to give them to someone who was gonna that would defeat the purposes of having the one bag. So yes, I got rid of things, but I didn't throw things away. I, rearranged to kind of set myself up for that. But then yes, like I started to check out some of the grocery stores I'd never been to, checked out the bulk areas of those stores, and what do they have and who has the things with the least trash. And so sometimes I would like hold off on buying a certain thing until I had checked some other options. Let's see. I'm very outdoors active, so I also did not, I had to stop buying certain things. So I guess you don't know, but I had bought maybe like gels for running, or clip bars for hiking, or that kind of stuff. So I held myself to this even when I was not at my house.
Oh, okay.
So certain things that ended up in the trash were things like I was at an event and I accepted a paper cup. And so I would take the paper cup home.
I remember accepting that paper cup.
Yeah, well, I often am like, like, do not force that trash upon me.
I have a question about your one bag of trash, right?
Yeah.
Did you start the year with that bag and just put things in that same bag without disposing of it for the whole year? So you didn't have anything, what we would say, putrescible in the solid waste world. You didn't have it. You composted your food waste, and so
correct.
There was nothing in there that you had to get rid of within the year.
Correct, and that's a good point. So I don't eat a lot of meat at home still. So meat is kind of one of the ones that would be complicated in terms of trash. The meat that I would buy, I would only get from a butcher shop, and so it'd be wrapped in paper. And then I would often, I think what I did with the paper was like take it to a friend's house where we were having a fire or something like that, and use it in the fire.
Cool.
But I did eat less meat that year probably. And there's some years where I eat not very much meat. And I don't eat a lot of meat at home anyway, but my cat gets very excited when I have meat because it's like, and he eats meat, but when he smells fresh meat. But so that was one thing. But yeah, I had the one trash. Yeah.
And you say you were composting, were you composting yourself, or were you taking it somewhere, or?
Yes, I was composting myself. And I still compost in this way, which is that I don't necessarily use it for gardening, but it does, I definitely, there's worms, the compost goes away. It's incredible how fast it goes away. And I basically just turn it over in the earth and add water, I add earth. I don't put meat products in there. But almost everything else. Yeah.
I want to point out, so you said you were living in an apartment and you still managed to compost your waste. So that's another thing that you would commonly hear from someone in an apartment, that they just don't have the room or ability to compost.
Yeah. And I can clarify that a little bit. I was in a pretty an older quad downtown. So I did have a little bit of a yard. Like I had a front yard. I did have a little garden. Like I actually, I think I'm probably the only one who's ever done that at that particular property, but I actually moved the gravel away. That was kind of like the drive-in area, and I created kind of 2 beds. And I even had corn.
Oh,
corn.
Yeah, this is right off Don. This is a location that ultimately I ended up having to move out early because it had so many structural issues when they were trying to redo the roof. I think the city red tagged it essentially. Oh, no. This is before I worked for the city, but it was an old quad. It's downtown. I think it finally got renovated in the last couple of years, but it was vacant for many years after I was in it. But it did have a little bit of an area that I could use for a garden and a yard. So I had some earth that might not be present in some apartment situations. But there are those there. I have seen there's in-home compost products.
There are.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who've had those and they seem to work very well. And then also the places like Reunity Resources will take your compost, right? So you can just drop it off.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I was asking is because
Yeah.
thinking about, meat, any paper products, even compostable takeout packaging, like all of those things, if you were thinking about it, could go to one of those larger industrial composting operations, depending on what you were already doing. But yeah, I was just
Right.
curious if you were doing it
Right.
yourself or.
Yeah, and I think that point about the more industrial composting is a really good one because I don't, I think those options have improved since that time. Probably, I think I was mostly avoiding that kind of stuff because I knew that wouldn't compost in my home compost, right? So I wasn't
It
using.
doesn't get hot enough for
Right.
things that are labeled compostable. The packaging, it has to get a lot hotter than your home compost.
Right.
I have a question about Erin. Have you ever thought about having your own chickens as a source of protein, or what's the thought process on something like that? Do they emit a lot of waste?
So the main reason I haven't done chickens is I just don't want to have to worry about them when I'm not at home. My parents had chickens for a little while, and I do eat a lot of eggs actually. That's pretty core part of my diet. I do a lot of personal challenges, and I was doing 40 new things the year I turned 40. And one of the new things was being a vegan for more than 40 days. So I did try not eating eggs for that long, and I also had some really fun grocery store visits to just try all sorts of vegan things, and I still incorporate that in as well. But yeah, the main reason I don't have chickens is just because I don't necessarily want to commit to taking care of them right now.
Chickens are a lot of work.
I understand that. Where I used to live, I took a chicken class and I even had a coop. But when it came down to it, I was like, oh, this is way more work than I wanted to do.
I grew up with chickens, and it was one of those, living with it for the first 13 years of my life. I just saw how much it was, every morning and every night and during the day. Now, granted, we had 200, not 5, like some people would, but still, it at that point, it's kind of just, it doesn't scale exponentially. Like you have 5 and it's sort of the same amount of work as having 15 and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, chickens are hard. I'm curious, Erin, when you were doing this challenge in 2011, like what was the hardest thing and what was surprisingly easy?
Good question. So I think, let's see. Surprisingly easy. I guess I thought it ended up being kind of fun, which I didn't really realize. I didn't really know I was going to gamify it when I started it, but then it ended up being kind of like that. So in that sense, I found that fun. It was, the hard might have been like keeping people from bringing trash into my house.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no, don't bring that Starbucks cup into my house. I'm gonna have to put it in this trash. And actually, my dad got somewhat annoyed at me once because he had. So there was one time when I didn't allow someone. Because I think to your point, Shirley, my dad is a diabetic, so he had some needles and stuff, and I was like, no, you got to take that home with you. Like I didn't want that in my trash. Yeah. So that was one time I drew the line. He's like, you're cheating. No, I get to.
I'm not cheating if you brought it. If you pack it in, pack it out.
Well, no, but because I mostly wasn't doing that. Like mostly, if it came into my house and that mostly fell within my rules because I was trying to get people. If they were in my house, I was kind of in control of what they bring in. But in that case, I wasn't. And but so the fact that I disallowed him from throwing that away. He thought I was cheating, but I decided I got to set the rules on my challenge. Yeah.
Sure, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned making your own toothpaste, and I have to confess, in preparing for this conversation, I tried to Google you, and instead came up with a woman in Australia who's been doing zero waste for a long time now. She has a whole blog about it. Anyway, she had an article about making her own mascara. Did you delve into like the makeup and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember how much. I don't use a lot of makeup, but I probably had some at that point. But good question. Yeah, so I did have to look for I definitely wanted to not get things. There's things that have boxes that are recyclable, and then they might have like layers of material in between that are not, and that kind of thing. So I certainly made choices on what type of like personal hygiene products to buy based on packaging quite a bit. And I would say that is one of the more challenging areas for sure. And there was things like I said, mentioned, there was the toothbrush you could order that you could send back, and that way they would recycle it.
I remember that.
Yeah. And you're right. Like when I did Google other people, and there were a few different blogs that I learned about products from based on other people's experience at that time. And so I knew I was not the only one doing this. And there were some people who were like, oh, my trash is in this one little jar. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to quite do that this year. Like I wasn't willing to go quite that extreme. So I did have trash, and it mostly was like weird pieces of plastic, or weird types of plastic, or things were wrapped in that I just wasn't able to find a way to avoid. So I did very little mail ordering, right? Which I love going to, consignment places, and I utilize the Habitat Restore quite a bit. There are places to do that kind of thing, and get products that aren't new necessarily. And then also, like, living in a small place, you need less stuff, right? And I was not in a studio. I was in an apartment. It had a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom, and a living room. But still, and also not having to make, again, my own repairs, that helped to make things easier. So, if I had to buy repair equipment or that kind of thing, there's often a lot of trash.
So a two-part question. First question is, was the trash bag like stuffed full at the end of the year? Was there room for more, or were you like jamming things in there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was not full. But it was, I would say it was like 3/4 full. But another thing that I did that would have added to it, but it wouldn't have filled it, was I kept like all my lids, and I kind of had this idea I was going to do like an art project, which eventually I guess I kind of have done. I have them in like color coded bottles now, and I've kind of created an art thing, because I still have
your little caps.
Like all those caps, yeah, because those are generally, as far as I know, not recyclable.
No.
Unless you guys tell me another source to recycle that type of thing, but
you can leave them on the plastic bottle.
But what about jars?
Nope.
Yeah. So I also, tried to not have as many of those things, but like sometimes you want olives, but they're in a jar, and you don't want to.
I was just going to ask, I know we have a few minutes remaining, but before we end today, I want to ask you what advice you have for people that may think of wanting to reduce their waste. I know that it's very apparent, Erin, that you have a passion for this. It's very apparent that you're self-read, self-taught, and I'm kind of lazy. I like to depend on people like you and Michaela and Charlene and other, like the nice calendar to like give me the information I need. But what kind of words of encouragement or advice would you have for people to just try taking a crack at reducing their own footprint, their own waste?
I guess the two things I would say are explore the composting, because it's kind of amazing how much you can reduce your trash. And the smell of your trash, honestly, like it totally changes what your trash is. So I would say that's one thing. Look into composting options, and then two, look into bulk options, where you can reuse the same container over and over again. That reduces a lot as well. And then also just question whether you need the packaging. Like, do I need to put these in a plastic bag, or does it matter? I'm going to wash them anyway. Like, they've already been through how many people's hands before they got on that shelf?
Yeah.
Does it hurt to put them on the conveyor belt without a plastic bag?
Well, I have to say, Erin, your passion is motivating. And I have to I've been listening to this conversation, getting some ideas on what we could do at our home now, and it's very encouraging to be able to listen to people that have made these changes in their lives to help. And yeah, I just want to say it really cool, man. Like really,
Yeah.
really cool.
Very,
Well,
very inspiring. And this was a New Year's resolution, correct?
It was 10 years ago. Or I'd say New Year's challenge or like a challenge, because I really did gamify it. Like it was more about doing something I already, like you said, felt passionate about. And honestly, like when I was a kid, I was the one making my parents cut the 6-packs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think this is incredibly timely going into the new year, and I know you've inspired all of us, and I hope you've inspired anybody listening. Like Esteban said, just to try and take a stab at something, reduce your waste somewhere. You mentioned food waste being such a big part of your waste. That can easily be 75% or even more. And if you want to reduce methane gases and help with climate change, that is the place to start. So whether you can compost or not, anything you can do to reduce your food waste is going to help. Whether it's supply chain issues or whether it's the end of the line issues for it, that's the place to start. So if there's one challenge for people out there, start with that.
Yeah, and like we've said on this show before, it's not about every one person doing it perfectly. It's just about doing what you can. So take a stab at it.
You don't have to just produce one bag of trash.
You don't have to be an Erin.
And I do have more than one bag now, for sure.
You can have a superhero goal, but anything you do helps.
Yeah.
Well, love this conversation. So timely to have at the beginning of the year, and helps set some lofty goals for me and my household to start in on, and got me thinking. So thank you. I really appreciate this, Erin and Michaela and Shirlene. I mean, what a thought-provoking conversation today has been. Any final thoughts for our listening audience before we leave today?
Erin?
I would just say, when you do something like this, I was really impressed at the reaction I did get from other people. So I found myself like taking other people's compost back to my house with me because they'd be like, well, now I feel guilty about throwing things away. And that was not the point. That was not the point at all. But I think the idea is that there really are some steps to take, and some of them are not hard at all, for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Really
Thank
cool.
you for having me. Yeah. Good to see you all.
Well done. Shirlene, Michaela, any final thoughts for our listening audience out there today?
Recycle your Christmas tree if it's a real one, and going into the new year, do what you can.
Reduce that food waste. Happy New Year. Take care of yourself.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
It's been a hard couple of years. Take care of yourself.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for this conversation. Really appreciate it. All right. I want to say thank you to Erin McSherry, Michaela Bagans, Shirlene Sitton for another great thought-provoking conversation with our friends from the City of Santa Fe Environmental Services Division. Have a great morning.